Good evening, Board. I'm here as a concerned parent. I'm sure you guys know the situation that's been going on with the racial slurs, text, threats, different things like that. The situation as a whole, myself and other parents are not happy with how it was handled, whether it was from administration or the board itself. Different situations, similar situations are handled more strictly than others, and this is one of those cases where it was pretty much laid back, taken lightly, and we were supposed to be okay with it. At what point do we feel that our kids are important enough for the board itself to reach out to us concerned parents?
The first thing that we opened with was an incident where a young child of color was told to his face in a Civil War dress-up activity that's already of spurious educational value that he was someone else's property. There are plenty of other schools in Cobb County that still manage to teach the Civil War without engaging in this sort of activity. It doesn't affect my personal child. My personal child does not go to this school, but I live in this community. And if people think that it is okay to make racist comments in the Cobb County School District, that is not the community that I want to live in. This activity should have never happened. The district should have a policy about cultural sensitivity, and the district should be willing to repudiate this form of racism in its entirety. Perhaps you should look to the Cobb County Police Department, which is undergoing a cultural sensitivity audit. I'm sure they would be more than happy to make recommendations to you. We can all do better.
I'm speaking as a school counselor in response to racially driven incidents in Cobb schools. I'm asking the board to demonstrate that Cobb cares about the impacts of such incidents on students. The impact is in fact immense from a mental health standpoint. One study describes the long-term physical, mental, and emotional effects of racism on Black students as weathering, as in weathering a storm. The time, energy, and emotion Black students expend navigating a world full of racial stereotypes and discrimination may result in toxic stress and anxiety, heart disease, diabetes, and accelerated aging, and may even be a risk factor for suicide. And to be clear, being called a slave or referred to as the N-word regarding their, quote, extermination constitutes this stress-inducing racism. If anyone doubts if this weathering is happening to our kids, because I'm a school counselor and students disclose things to me that they do not share elsewhere, I can assure you that some students are anguishing over how racism hits them. To work towards the mission on our paperwork and polos, we must acknowledge that some students of color don't feel they're on the one team we claim to be. Instead of dealing merely with incidents that show up in the media, this problem needs to be addressed at the root. The Cobb faculty, parents, and community members standing here in support, and I urge the board to act. First, by providing district-wide culturally responsive teaching and implicit bias professional development. Whether students endure racism as a result of teachers unknowingly using harmful simulation activities to introduce slavery, from teachers who openly make bigoted comments, or from other students, such training would equip staff with the skills to ensure all our kids feel safe, cared for, and welcome in the classroom. Second, by hiring a chief diversity officer to assist the district with inclusive curriculum, cross-cultural communication, and goal setting. Recently, I learned that some local high school students believed that minority meant less of a person. Luckily, someone corrected this distressing misunderstanding. With delayed responses to racism, debate over the merit of legitimate concerns, and staff attempting to teach required standards without cultural competence due to a lack of training, we lead students of color to believe that this misinterpretation of minority is actually true, at least in Cobb County School District. Let's use every tool we can to prove them wrong.
I am the father of a student from South Cobb High School who is the victim of racism. I have spoken to the principal concerning this, and he pretty much blew me off. He told me that it was just a joke. I spoke to Mr. Ragsdale. I sent him an email with at least 200 words in it. He sent me back an email saying show proof. Wouldn't see me. I spoke to Mr. Morgan. I gave him all my proof 2 months ago. Mr. Morgan, said that he was going to give the information to you. Apparently he did not. I think he just buried it. So I had to resort to protesting, which you've probably seen on the news Thursday. And I'm here to plead to you to do something. This is a serious situation. A teacher last year, I've been working at this for a year now, threatened to hang some Black students. The students wasn't sure whether he actually meant it. So they asked him the next day, what did he mean? He went on a 7-minute rant, racist rant about how it was his way or no way and get out, and that the principal wasn't going to do anything. So we went to the principal. He didn't do anything. So I'm pleading with you to do something today.
I'm here today to acknowledge the racial incidents that have been taking place at my school, South Cobb High School. It's been over a year of students filing complaints about teachers stepping out of line and making racist comments to students. These remarks range from white teachers telling Hispanic students that if they don't answer the question correctly, they'll be thrown over Trump's wall, and another teacher telling his class he would introduce them to his four wheels. The parents of not only the victims, but other kids who have not been directly affected by this have lost confidence in some of the staff members and faculty and administration because they feel like they're not doing a good enough job of protecting their students from discrimination. Some parents do not feel welcomed, and instead they think that they shouldn't say anything because they are living in fear that their child is going to be reprimanded for speaking out against this. And for now, those parents who want to see action from the superintendent and the Board of Education, they say that if they don't see any action, then they'll be soliciting help from outside agents.
I'm following up on a previous request that I made for the district to hire a chief diversity officer. Many incidents from this year and years prior have resulted in this request. Matters of racism, bias, negative community relations, and ineffectual communication have resulted in the district's need to hire someone else to do this work. Statements and actions from the district are insensitive, not culturally relevant, and are damaging to the one team, one goal mantra. You have a chief academic officer, you have a chief of staff, you have a chief technology officer, and a chief financial officer. My repeated recommendation is that you need to hire a chief diversity officer, and this is why. Number one, this person will evaluate curriculum to be sure it's culturally relevant and responsive. Number two, this person would conduct or organize intercultural competency, anti-bias, and diversity trainings. Three, this person would craft and communicate responses to matters like we've heard about today that are sensitive in nature. And then four, this person would add specific diversity language to the strategic plan so that measurable and attainable goals can be set for improvement district-wide. I have served on the search committee for a chief diversity officer at my place of employment. My education and experience would allow me to help you with that endeavor as well. So I am volunteering to help you all find a chief diversity officer. Recent and past events have shown that this position is much needed in this district. So I would like a written response within 30 days to tell me how you plan to implement this goal. Thank you.
I'm here speaking again as a school counselor about the necessity to better address the educational needs of students from diverse backgrounds through culturally responsive teaching training for faculty. As a school counselor, I sometimes receive messages of gratitude from board members for my work. Often at holidays or professional recognition events, I get emails and verbal praise, including the phrase, "Thanks for all you do." While I appreciate the acknowledgement, I would feel more valued if it seemed my school board took seriously unmet student needs I have identified. However, though the response I received when I spoke previously indicates that you all acknowledged my concerns, it was very clear that those concerns were summarily dismissed. True appreciation might result in a more participatory response, like a phone call or an email asking for additional research regarding how the practice many of us are promoting benefits all students. Just like phonics and PLCs, culturally responsive teaching is best practice for all kids. It should not be confused with egalitarianism, and instead is an actual pedagogy in which students' unique cultural strengths are identified and nurtured to promote achievement and a sense of well-being about the student's place in the world. With focus currently and appropriately on student safety, we should certainly be concerned whether our kids feel a sense of school belonging. Though it may be uncomfortable to acknowledge that we all have biases that can negatively impact students, providing training to address it is not an admission of failure. Instead, it's the opposite. Tackling our prejudices to increase student performance is a forward-thinking approach, demonstrating our willingness to engage in the most difficult work because it will provide a more equitable, not egalitarian environment. Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, "Do the best you can until you know better.
30
Then, when
seconds.
you know better, do better." I think many educators are doing the best they can. They just don't know enough yet. But some of us do know, this board included, that there are students facing severe mental health consequences of mishandled situations in classrooms involving racism. I ask the district to provide this training, which will help us all know better so that we can do better by our students, who deserve our very best.
The unwavering desire to ensure the best for our children is precisely why educators should have implicit bias and anti-racism training. Lack of training is hurting our children. 20 years I taught in Cobb. When I encountered issues around race in my classroom, I didn't know how to respond. How could I? There was no training. Who would I go to? My principal, another white woman who knew no more than I did? This is a difficult and complex subject. Teachers, principals, and the CCSD board need comprehensive training. Do it for the children.
About a year and a half ago, I came to the Cobb County School Board meeting to express my concern about the racist Snapchat incident that had recently, at that time, occurred at North Cobb High School. Since that time, I have been to many school board meetings, and I have met other community members, parents, and students who are struggling day in and day out at Cobb County schools. In fact, I cannot remember talking to one single Black person affiliated with Cobb County Schools that does not have a complaint about the insidious racism at the school and district level. I am here this evening not to chastise you. Instead, I am coming to you with a few ideas for progress. First off, it is time for Cobb County Schools, you all, the superintendent and the school board, to acknowledge the racism that Black students and families feel in your schools. It is the truth.
There's a pattern of operation that I like to point out because admitting and naming the problem is often the first and most important step. Whether intentional or not, in our county, people with power make decisions that shift resources to areas with the most away from those that need it the most. That's the exact opposite of equity. The mere suggestion that we move thriving educational programs from the South to wealthier parts of the county is in direct opposition of the things that Cobb claims to stand for. We don't talk enough about what everyone needs, so let's talk about it now. I work at Garrett Middle School. Our building is almost half a century old. Our halls are overcrowded. Our bathrooms and water fountains overflow regularly. The wet floors pair well with the occasional smell of sewage that comes through our halls when the weather is bad and sometimes when it isn't. In my role as an ethical school counselor, PBIS data analyst, and decent human being, I must work, push, and when necessary, fight for equity for all of my students and community. My responsibility is to tell stories with numbers and make data sing songs that lead to change. These are conservative estimates, but we have roughly 330 different class periods each day. Of those, 55 periods have more than 30 students. 31 have more than 35 students. 3 have more than 40 students. It's often difficult to effectively reach 40 adults. Imagine trying to do that with 40 teenagers each day. This makes learning much more challenging. It also creates a safety issue because we have roughly 900 students, and with all these needs and pains cramped in small spaces, we only have 2 counselors when it's recommended that we should have 4 or more. With all these barriers, we find ways to creatively reach our students and make more with less. Our teachers and students are tired but resilient. We've experienced stress in various forms of primary and secondary trauma. Much of our community is burdened by various forms of racism, classism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, and all other forms of marginalization, both in and outside of our buildings. So I'm here to do the thing I do best, which is create opportunities to listen, take notes, and create conditions where change can occur. If we truly believe in one team, one goal, student success,
Mr. Nwosu.
join us as we work to make things better or move out of the way and allow someone to serve who will. Please provide a real